Okay, buenos dias. Today we're going to do an introduction to our ER and IR verbs in Spanish. Remember in chapter 2, I told you guys that there are 3 kinds of verbs in Spanish. We have AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. So that means that once we've seen these next 2 sets of endings, we will have seen all of the present tense endings that we have in Spanish. Okay, so just as a warm-up, think about the AR verbs from our last chapter, and see if you can write 5 original sentences using different forms. Okay, what I mean by different forms, don't use yo for every one. I picked an example with ser. So, yo soy profesora de español. Sentence with tú, de donde eres tú. Example with nosotros or nosotras. Mi hermana y yo no somos altas. An example for él would be mi padre es de Michigan. And an example with the plural third person form be las flores en el campus son muy bonitas. So you can do the same exact thing with any of your AR verbs. So think tomar, desayunar, bailar, descansar, estudiar. And we can do a really easy one with estudiar. Okay? So yo estudio español, tú estudias inglés, mi hermana y yo estudiamos historia. We could say mi padre no estudia, and our last one we could say something like Roberto y Marta estudian química. Okay, so just a quick warm-up with AR verbs. Now on this page I have all of our endings. The first set should look familiar. So notice we have our base verb, hablar, our infinitive. We take off that ar and add o, as, a, amos, ais, an. And it's super important to remember what those correspond to. So o corresponds to yo, as corresponds to tú, a corresponds to anything singular, amos to anything, to we, ais to y'all in Spain, and then an to anything plural. Okay, that would also include our y'all form anywhere but Spain. So for instance in Mexico to say y'all speak good English, we would use ustedes hablan bien el inglés. So look at your forms for our ER and IR verbs. We have comer y vivir. If you take a look at it, we see a common denominator. The O's are always going to be what you end the verb with in yo. If we look at tú, we see that the tú form always ends with an S. Okay? We see that the nosotros form always ends with mos, no matter what kind of verb it is. We see that vosotros always ends with an is, and that we see that the plural form always ends with an n. So the only thing that's different between these 3 sets of, or kinds of verbs, is the vowels. Okay, so the vowels, obviously in comer, we don't have an a in that verb at all, so we're not going to say comas, but comes, for you eat. Comemos, for we eat. Alright, so once you have this pattern down, you can apply it to every single ER verb you ever see. Same thing for the IR pattern. Notice the difference between ir and verbs. If we were to conjugate vivir, yo vivo en Nacogdoches, tú vives en Nacogdoches, él vive en Nacogdoches. Our nosotros form is the only one that's different. We have vivimos instead of vivemos. Vivís instead of vivéis. So really we have 2 forms that are different, the nosotros and the vosotros. Okay, so write down those forms. Okay, keep those handy as you get used to using them. And eventually, after using them a lot, they'll become more automatic. And you don't have to consult your table or chart every time you do it. Okay, so one of our verbs, and these are not all of the verbs from the chapter, I don't think, but there's several of them. Our first verb is aprender, to learn. Okay, so if you have that chart written out in front of you, if you didn't do it now, so our o, es, e, hemos, eis, en. Alright, el bebé a caminar. So the idea here is the baby learns to walk. El bebé is singular. Alright, so we're going to have aprende. See, el bebé aprende a caminar. Next one down we have el niño a montar en bicicleta. So the boy learns, is what we need in that blank, learns to ride a bike. So, el bebé and el niño, they're both singular. They're both going to have the same form. El niño aprende a montar en bicicleta. Our third one down, nosotros, sobre geografía. So we learn about geography. What do you remember about nosotros? They always will end with mos. Okay, so nosotros aprendemos sobre geografía. And then our last one, que, oops, and my blanks are wrong here. This tú in parentheses should come right after the blank. So it should say, que blank tú en esa clase. So what do you learn, or what are you learning in that class? Okay, so what do you remember about tú? It will always end with S. Okay, so ¿qué aprendes? ¿Qué aprendes tú en esa clase? We'll try that with a couple other ones. So with the verb correr, correr is to run. We have el chita muy rápido. Alright, we can tell by the el, it's a singular noun. So our verb is just going to end with the vowel. El chita corre. Corre muy rápido. Alright, now we have el criminal con el dinero. So he runs away, he runs with the money. El criminal, singular, corre con el dinero. And now we have la chica en el gimnasio, another singular one. So these are all corre. El chita corre, el criminal corre, la chica corre. Last one's a little different. I'm switching the sentence around to you, or the question around to you. So, ¿y a ti? ¿Y a ti te gusta? So, you, do you like to run? Alright, if you remember back from the last chapter, chapter 2, when we use gusta, so me gusta, te gusta, our second verb, we're going to leave it alone. So, te gusta, we'll leave it correr. ¿Te gusta correr? Alright, let's look at leer. Leer is to read. Okay, so our first example, and we'll learn this word in this chapter, is mi abuela, my grandmother. So, mi abuela, el periódico. She reads the paper. Alright, look at abuela. Think about if she's singular or plural. It's obviously singular. So we're just going to use our form lee. Now this might look funny if you've never seen it written out. It's going to have two E's. So mi abuela lee el periódico. Now we have las mujeres. Las mujeres, novelas. Alright, so think about mujeres. Las mujeres is a plural group. It doesn't involve you, it doesn't involve me. So it's going to be that last form, that ellos or ellas form. Always ends with an N. So las mujeres leen novelas. Okay, next one we have yo, comics. I read comics, yo leo. Now we have our question and tú form. ¿Qué tú en este momento? What are you reading right now? ¿Qué lees? ¿Qué lees tú en este momento? Alright, let's skip this one for a minute. So same kind of drill. We're using the verb beber, to drink, which is an alternative for the verb tomar that you already learned. We comer, to eat. Let's look at an IR verb. So here we have compartir. Let's do escribir. Okay, escribir. We have here el policía. And it's not a mistake, by the way, that that's el policía. It's kind of a weird word where the article is el, even though our ending is an a. Now, if it had been a female police officer in this picture, it would have said la. But anyway, el policía, we want our form for he writes a ticket. El policía escribe una multa. Los estudiantes. Los estudiantes. Now here we have a picture of one student, but the sentence is about many students. So los estudiantes escriben una composición. And lastly we have mi madre, un cheque. So just like policía is a singular, so mi madre escribe un cheque. Okay, so hopefully you get how this pattern works. Alright, so there's two objectives each time you learn about verbs. One objective is just to learn the meanings of the verbs. So one part of your study should just be however you choose to study, whether it's flashcards or saying them out loud. You're just learning the meanings of these verbs. Escribir, compartir, vivir, comer. Alright, that's one half of the work. The other half is just knowing how to change them for each sentence. All right, and those things are equally important. Because if you know how to change a word but you don't know what it means, it's not going to be useful for you. If you know what a word means but you don't know how to change it to fit the sentence, you're going to not express your ideas correctly. So make sure you're doing both of those things. We won't do these right now, but it's the same idea. We have recibir, to receive. And let's look at a couple of these questions, okay? So think to yourself if these are cierto, true, o falso para ti. So for you personally, are these things cierto o falso? So número uno, todos los días, by the way, means every day. So número uno, bebo leche todos los días. ¿Cierto o falso? Okay? In my case, I would say falso. I do not drink milk every day, so I would say no. No bebo leche todos los días. Número dos, mi familia vive en Nacogdoches. So in my case, it would be cierto. So sí, mi familia vive en Nacogdoches. Número tres, comprendo el japonés. Comprendo el japonés. Okay, so en mi caso, in my case, no es cierto, es falso. No comprendo el japonés. Número 4, escribo poemas. ¿Cierto o falso para ti? Okay, en mi caso es falso, although it used to be cierto. I would say no, generally, normalmente no escribo poemas. Número 5, vivo en un apartamento. ¿Cierto o falso para ti? ¿Vives en un apartamento? Okay, yo no vivo en un apartamento. Yo vivo en una casa. Número 6, comparto comida con mis amigos. Now, comida is not an official vocabulary word, but it's useful. It means food. So, ¿compartes comida con tus amigos? So if you're a nice person, maybe sí, cierto, you share food with your friends. So sí comparto comida con mis amigos, or no comparto comida. Número 7, we have como en Chick-fil-A. ¿Comes en Chick-fil-A? Yo sí. Sí, yo como en Chick-fil-A. Número 8, corro en el gimnasio. So if I were to really phrase these as questions, obviously these would be in do form with the S on the end. ¿Corres en el gimnasio? Okay, so sí o no. Número 9. Aprendo francés en esta clase. Aprendo. So you need to work with aprendo versus comprendo. Comprendo sounds like comprehend, so that's to understand. Aprendo is to learn. So, ¿aprendes francés en esta clase? Okay, obviously no. We would say no aprendo francés. Número 10. Abro, this is a new IR verb, abrir, to open. Abro la puerta para mi abuela. Okay, hopefully everyone will say cierto. You open the door for your grandmother. So sí, abro la puerta para mi abuela. El número 11. Asisto a una clase de matemáticas. In my case, no asisto a una clase de matemáticas. This is a tricky one because our verb asistir is what we call a false cognate or a false friend because it looks like the verb assist, but it actually means attend. All right? The verb to assist, like to help somebody, would be a different verb. Okay? We would probably use the verb ayudar. But to attend something, we are going to use the verb asistir, and we always use this little preposition a. So if you attend a concert, you would say asisto a un concierto. If you attend a class, asisto a una clase. Número 12. Leo el periódico. Okay, a good way to remember periódico is think the word periodical. What comes out periodically is a newspaper. So, ¿lees el periódico? ¿Sí o no? En mi caso, no leo el periódico mucho. Número 13, and we're down to 2 more questions. Escribo muchos mensajes de texto. Alright, use your context clues with mensajes. If you kind of convert that J to a G, when you look at it, it looks kind of like messages, right? So,